reopen the meeting, we'll do that. We're going to start with item 10, the Strategy and Policy Forward Work Programme. And then I'm expecting Leanne to be back very shortly, and we'll continue with the rest of the agenda at that point. So item 10, the 2019-20 Strategy and Policy Forward Work Programme. Thank you very much indeed for this report. So Emma, did you want to make some introductory comments first?
Yep, certainly. So we presented the Forward Work Programme in December last year. And at that meeting, the feedback was that you were really interested in sort of it being a bit more forward-focused rather than looking back. So we've updated it to really include those strategies and policies that are on the work plan for this financial year, and provide an update on their status. And then that's under each of the 6 strategic priorities, so you can see how they align to the priorities. And so there are 40 in total, right from those that sort of align to all of the priorities, and then under each of the 6 they've identified the key ones. We can take questions. So this is really what's on currently, and then what we're suggesting is that post-election we'll come back with some further planning on what that program looks like for the next triennium.
So further to that last comment, there, depending on the direction of the new council,
yes,
it's possible that the strategic directions may change,
yes,
either slightly or more significantly, depending
yep,
on the view of the new council. Mm-hmm. So presumably that next update may be presentation of what's currently scheduled for that period with a view to being updated by the new council, or would it more likely be a work programme that's been updated as a result of the new strategic directions of the new council, or would that not have been taken into account by that time?
I think it depends a little bit on the timing and how that comes about. I understand that there's some discussions of some early work where we look at the strategic framework and the priorities. So once we've seen what they look like, we'll have an idea of how much work, how closely the work aligns, and how it fits under those. But I think under the strategic priority, I mean, the framework is designed not just around the strategic priorities, it's the entire strategic framework. So it's very much also around the community outcomes. So I think if you take those into consideration, I would expect that the work program would align more or less with that.
Yeah.
Unless there was some significant change.
So after the local body elections, when is that currently scheduled to occur?
We haven't got a date for when we report back. I think it would depend a little bit in terms of when the council would anticipate be ready to see something. I would see it after the induction and some of the sort of workshopping, so we've got a bit of a feel for what the priorities are, and then we can put it into context and keep it relevant.
I think that would be useful, and the new council probably
so
would
it may even be towards the end of this year or early next year.
Yeah, and the new council probably would have a view on how often they wanted to have a look at this as well.
So now we update 6 monthly, but we can look at that. Yep.
Yep, perfect. All right, so moving to other questions. Phil and Yanni. Phil.
Thank you, Emma. I just want to ask you about the strategy for local alcohol policy review. Yes. And like as you wrote, it's been deferred until February 2021. I'm just wondering, in terms of recent concern about the most recent research on the harm that is caused, if in fact staff might be able to advise or suggest to the new council that in fact that strategy be brought forward in some way.
We can certainly discuss that with the new council, and I think we would need to consider that in the context of any national legislation, or whether they're going to make any updates to that at a national level, and then how that flows on to what we do at a local level. Yep. Yeah, and recognising the harm.
I wonder if part of that action might be too this council actually writing to central government around the legislation.
I think they would go out for consultation on that, and we would certainly provide a submission to that.
I'm just wondering how we might be able to be proactive in the future, that's all.
Yeah, this is probably more detail
Yeah,
about a
it is.
particular
Yes, that is
piece
quite.
of
I mean,
work
I
related
can
to this
respond to
programme.
that one because it's obviously very current and topical. So I've been thinking about that myself. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yanni and then Pauline. Yanni.
Thank you for bringing this report. I just, one kind of gap that seems to be missing is the FTE requirements. So I have no sense of what staff requirement is for each of these strategies. And as we keep adopting new strategies to do or are expending resource, it seems like other things are getting delayed. How can we have oversight of the resource required to do these strategies and how new strategy ideas will impact on that?
Well, we look at what our resourcing is, and this is actually across the organisation. So this isn't just the work that's done within my team at the strategic policy. This is broadly across the organisation.
Yeah.
So really in developing this, we've done this very closely in consultation with the head ofs and also the GMs to make sure that it's prioritised and resourced around their capability. So it's had input from ELT and the GMs around that. So I wouldn't expect that we would come to you with specific number of FTEs working on each of the areas.
So when things like the sports and rec strategy just gets delayed for years and years and years because there's other priorities that seem to go ahead of it, how do we have confidence that if we've asked for something to happen, it will happen?
Well, all of these strategies also go through their committees. So this is really to provide sort of a high-level portfolio view. I think if you've got particular strategies that you want to see more urgency or prioritisation around, then I'd suggest you actually raise that up through the committee that hears that strategy.
Okay, so you have no concern as to the staff resource required to develop all of these strategies in the timeframe that we've identified?
Well, we've worked with head ofs and GMs. Obviously, there will always be pressures around balancing and prioritising that and using our resources. I mean, that's always a pressure, but we're doing it very much in consultation with the head ofs and ELT in terms of where we put the prioritisation. But things will be delayed, that's the reality.
Pauline.
Right.
Living with the water, I think it's 488. So actually you've got on track there but behind schedule. So really it probably should be marked as behind because we are waiting on adaptation options and that could actually be quite, who knows how long that's going to take.
Yeah, I can take that feedback back to the, and I think it's...
Just so we can keep an eye on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. I'm sorry, we're going to have to get on to the other paper. So unless it's absolutely vital, we're reviewing the attached policy work. We've provided feedback. We're noting that the next update will be scheduled for after the local body elections and cover work plan for the next triennium. So unless we're... Thank you. Seconded by Dion. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye.